I'm going to stop that little timer and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll introduce myself and then I'll let my colleague introduce himself since we've got such a cozy little group here. My name is Brian. I have been a teacher for, well, this is my 30th year in education. Let me preface that. My 30th year in education, but it's my 18th year at TCI and 12th year, I taught for 12 years before coming to TCI. So I was a middle school teacher. I used TCI extensively. And then I became a trainer, actually at the same time that Carl did. And we came in together. I trained for 2 years and then I left the classroom and I started working full-time for TCI. And I work as a national account manager and I'm also a developer at TCI. I'm lucky to have with me good friend of mine. We started way back when. He's a longtime teacher and trainer. Carl, go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, I started teaching when dinosaurs roamed the earth in 1981. I taught almost 40 years, economics, U.S. history, world history, government, AP economics for 10 years, and then also a whole bunch of journalism, and a few other odds and ends along the way, a little bit of science, middle school science, which was not my favorite. And then came across TCI in the late 1990s. The early 1990s when they had the big fat binders full of supplementary lessons.
Yes.
And then I started doing some piloting and some other kinds of efforts to try and help TCI, and then came on as a trainer and have been involved with TCI really since the early 1990s.
Thank you, Carl. Christy, I think it must be the audio on your end. I hear Carl pretty well. You all let us know if you do hear something scratchy. I mean, Lord knows anything can happen with the virtual world, but I think it must be on your side because I do hear Carl pretty well on my side. All right. With that being said, a little housekeeping. We actually don't have a Q&A set up for this webinar because we have so few people. So if you have questions, you can always do what you've just been doing, is use the chat, pop in a question. Carl is going to be helping me out monitoring the chat and let me know if somebody's got some questions that he wants to kind of throw out there. And I'll make sure that I stop as well for several times. So make sure you make good use of the chat. If you do need closed captioning, you can actually click to show the subtitles there at the very bottom of your screen if you enable the live transcript. So with that, I actually have a poll question. Now this uses a tool called Mentimeter, and Carl's going to pop in a direct link to this poll question so that you can actually answer it. It's how long have you been a teacher? If you want to scan the QR code and do it from a mobile device, I put a QR code down there in the lower right-hand corner. Or if you're really fast and you type really quickly, you can actually just go to menti.com and put in this code 35354634. I'll have 4 polls today during our time together. And what's really cool about it is that when you participate in the poll, the results show in real time. This is a tool called Mentimeter. It's one of our favorite new tools at TCI that we use for virtual presentations. And what strikes me here, Carl, is just the diversity that I see in terms of experience, right? We've got new teachers. We've got a veteran teacher. Well, we've got, I should say, on the extreme end, we've got folks that are new and 31 plus years. And then we've got quite a few folks that are in between that 11 to 30 years and even someone at 5 to 10. So we really hit the gamut when it comes to being a teacher. Thank you so much for participating. And a lot of you were able to do that quickly. Now we'll have some other chances at polls in a little bit. So if you've used a mobile device, you won't need to scan it again. Just keep that site handy. And I'll let you know when that is. What I'm going to be covering over the time that we have today is that we're going to go through and do the 101. So if you're thinking of a college course, a 101, a beginner's course, we're going to focus on 3 things: how to most quickly navigate through your TCI program. And if you're a returning TCI user, there's a lot that's changed, not just from year over year, But certainly, if you're coming back to TCI after several years, there's a lot that's different. So we'll focus in on navigating TCI, and then we'll take kind of a deeper look at teaching with TCI and assigning, assessing, and grading in TCI. We'll do a lot live in accounts today because that's really kind of the best way to be able to see it and experience it is in real time and live so that you get the most from it. We're going to provide for you, and Carl, let's go ahead and drop that link in there for the navigation guide. After the webinar today, anytime that you're using your account, or if you've got a colleague who's brand new to using TCI, we create a little navigation guide that is a good desk reference that you can utilize when you are getting started and you're trying to get your feet wet in using the online resources. So we'll provide that link again at the end of our webinar today, but I wanted to make sure I provided that right at the outset too. Let's talk about our secondary social studies programs and some of the common components and features of those before we go live. So there are a number of titles, and they continue to grow, by the way, for middle school and high school social studies nationwide. For middle school programs, they typically involve the ancient world, or a program called the World Through 1750, or a similar program that you might have called the Medieval World and Beyond, the U.S. Through Industrialism, the Medieval World, well, I just mentioned that one, the Medieval World and Beyond. I forgot that I got a picture of it right there. The United States Through Modern Times. And really the difference between these two U.S. programs for middle school is the U.S. Through Industrialism, it starts with Indigenous Americans, it ends in 1900. The United States Through Modern Times starts with European colonies and ends today, essentially. And then we have a tweener program. I call it a tweener because some states, about a third of them, teach geography at the middle school level, and a third of them will teach geography as a high school course. So we actually see a lot of people use Geography Alive in both middle and high school. So Geography Alive is the program that fits between those two. These four right down here, they're bona fide high school programs. Government Alive, Power, Politics, and You. World Connections, which is our high school world history program, The Power to Choose, and then finally Pursuing American Ideals, which is our U.S. history program for high school. There are common components and common pedagogical features to all TCI programs. So we'll talk about print first, and then we'll come back and we'll focus more on the online second. First is your district may have purchased you hardbound editions, whether they're in English or in Spanish, because we provide both. The textbook is a hardbound textbook. It has all the content in there, but it was written to go along with the lessons that we create at TCI. So it's a very considerate text. They tend to be much thinner than a traditional textbook from a publisher, because they're loading in a lot of extra lard and fat that you really don't need when it comes to teaching that content. So you might have a physical textbook from TCI. Now, if you don't, no worries, because your online account actually has the very same textbook. Program components also might include a print lesson guide for the teachers. Now, this would be a softbound version, again, in English or in Spanish, because we offer both. The lesson guide has the step-by-step procedures for our classroom activities. So, you know, Carl and I, we're old school teachers. We kind of like to have something in our hands every now and then. And so we might like to have that print lesson guide. Now, if your district only bought online access, no worries, because those very same procedures, they're in PDF format, and I'll show you where. They're in your online account, and we made a slide deck that actually brings it to life, that makes it super easy to carry off that lesson inside your class. Program components might also include what we call placards. Now, placards are laminated picture cards. They oftentimes will have primary source or visuals on there along with data. It could involve some excerpts as well that students will read, or summaries that would describe what they're viewing. They're typically used in lessons where there's station work going on inside the class. A good example is in a high school US class where students are learning about what we call the 5 founding ideals taken from our Declaration of Independence. The students will move around and they'll see 18 different placards in stations around the classroom. Well, these placards, they're laminated, meaning that they're durable and you can use them year over year. But again, no worries. If your district did not buy or you received placards from TCI, they're in your online account as PDFs. And not only that, you could easily share them with your students too. So you've got options for anything that's in print on the digital side. So I mentioned the text, I mentioned the lesson guides, I mentioned the placards, but there's also in your online accounts, there's lesson support, there's multimedia content. We've got a video library that we've activated now for all of our programs, an assessment builder, and you have an online grade book. All of that in an online teacher account. And of course, a student account, which would have some of those items, just not the ones that are teaching facing. So they would have their text and notebook. They would have the ability to be able to take online assessments, not make them, thankfully. So those are some of the features that we have that are common in our programs. We've made a concerted effort over the past year to, as we look at new navigational techniques and new items that we can add functionality to our online accounts, to really focus on 3 areas. To focus on video and make sure that we give you as much video as we can that's meaningful and teachable, that we give you flexibility, lots of options as a teacher. Where I taught, I had 42-minute bells. So 35 minutes or so, roughly, of instructional time. I need options as a middle school teacher when I'm looking at a lesson, so that some lessons I'm going to spend more time, some I'm going to spend less. We need flexibility there, of course. And then a big push that's been happening, and we're really happy about because it's always fit pedagogically within TCI, is a push towards inquiry. Well, we want to make it really obvious and give you lots of opportunities to do meaningful inquiry with your students. So these 3 areas have been a point of emphasis for us over the past year. You're going to see here in just a moment that every chapter, what we call a lesson at TCI, every chapter provides you 3 really important things. You've got flexibility when it comes to lesson options. You focus just on the reading. You've got a great classroom activity. Some might even have additional options, slide decks that you can share with the students that would have outlines. A lot of high school programs will have that. Diving deeper options when you're wanting to enrich and go beyond just the initial content and really deepen your students' understanding. We'll give you some really great primary sources and explore articles that you can assign to your students. And finally, you'll have options for every chapter to be able to assess your students, both with formative and good summative assessments. So you'll have things like lesson games every chapter, and you'll also have a summative assessment builder that gives you the capability of using a pre-made test, modifying a test, or making one from scratch and even sharing it internally within your district or outside and sharing it with everyone across the TCI community. So this and all of these components and pedagogical features, they are the things that really make our program as considerate as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go live right now, and I'm going to show you how to get in there, how to start moving around, how to be able to quickly be able to navigate through program content to unit overview to lesson overview into a lesson. And then we'll take a deeper dive from there. But before I do that and I go live, let me pause right there because we've got a smaller group. Are there any questions that you all have? And if you have a question, just say yes. And I think we can actually go in there. And I think I can unmute you so that you can ask your question. Any questions so far in what you've heard?
The chat so far, Brian, is pretty empty of questions. You must be just rocking it like crazy, man.
All right. I hope. Well, feel free if you do have questions. You can pop them in there, and the next time we stop, Carl can hit those to me my way. And Carl, feel free to, you can always interrupt me if it's something that's pressing, especially if it's something that we're going over. Sorry, so we're going to go live, and what I want to do is let's focus in first on just some of the navigation and the features that are there. So I'm actually going to back out to what you would see when you first log into your program. So here's what I'm not going to cover. I'm not going to cover how your account got created, because that could really happen a lot of different ways. If you're in a district that uses something like Clever or ClassLink, that it's already been done for you. You may be in a very small district where you had to create your own account from scratch. One of the things, and I'm going to pop it into our chat right now, is if you go to http help.teachtci.com. I just put it into the chat. If your account's not even been created yet, you can actually go to help.teachtci.com. I'm clicking it right now so you can see this. This is our help center, and that information is going to be covered in the very, very basics, how to go about creating your account. So I'm not going to cover that. I'm going to start by saying, you've had an account created. How do you get in there and navigate it? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these programs, and just for giggles, I'm going to use the PAI program, Pursuing American Ideals. And when I click Teach Now, one of the things that it will do is it will take me to a screen that looks like this right here. Now, when you logged in today, if your account is a carryover from last year, there's a good chance that your account doesn't look like this right here. And you might want it to. And you'll see why here in a minute, because there's a lot of information that I can see now that before last year, or I should say before, during the last school year, we had, but it was somewhat hidden. This new navigational format, if you've had a program subscription license and you're coming back to this school year, you probably see a little pop-up like this one that says back to school with TCI that mentions opting into a new navigation. So if you don't see that and your program doesn't have an arrangement of tiles on your screen like this right here, some of them might have videos even embedded within them, but here I can see all these tiles that have units. If you don't see that, go to your settings, which is in your sidebar over here, and click on opt-in features, and you're going to see it right here where you can opt in to be able to see a new navigational technique. And why you want to do that, let me go back to my program content, because it makes it much easier for me to be able to see all the resources at 3 different levels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this sidebar. Now we'll use this from time to time. Anytime that we need a resource that's not easily grabbed from over here, I'll open up this sidebar and you can do the same. You click it, it appears in this white space here. That's what that is. I'm going to minimize that. At the very top of your screen, I'll point out as well that that little website that I gave you, help, you can also access right from within your TCI account by clicking the little question button up there and then activating the help. It will take you right to the help website, or you can even provide feedback to us right there too. And of course, you've got your login. But I'm here at the program content page. I'm using this really gorgeous layout for these new unit structures that I see. And this,
Brian, can I jump in, Brian, real quick? We've got a question from Kathy. She says that in her case, her opt-in's not opening. It says to check back soon.
Yeah, and Kathy, I can see it. You're in Cincinnati Public. So for our custom programs, which CPS uses, we have not activated that yet, but we are going to, just so that you know. But yes, you are correct. It is not there for you just yet. No worries though, Kathy, you're not missing anything. It's there. I'll just need to make sure I point out where you would find it over here in the sidebar, okay? All right, so one of the things that I see on my program content here is I see each of the units that I have available for this high school U.S. history program. And I do have the ability of being able to click into and explore and go into that unit a little bit further. see unit openers or an inquiry project, unit closers that might involve a timeline challenge in my case, or analyzing something called analyzing American ideals. Your tile for your unit might not look exactly like mine. Some of them might have a video embedded within, but they'll have this tile that will all be related to a specific unit. Now, if you've not enabled the new navigation, or in Kathy's case, if you've not had an opportunity to be able to do that, your program content will be on a scrollable page. So you'll scroll down and you'll see the lists of units, and then underneath them, nestled underneath them, are the lessons that make up the unit. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to explore a unit a little bit further. I'm going to go into this one right here on the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression. And I want to see a unit overview. Now, unit overview is something that we create that provides for you a compelling question that you can use over several weeks. In some cases, as a middle school history teacher, a unit in some cases might be upwards of a month long. So it's going to provide you a compelling question that you can use with your students. It's also going to provide these unit projects. Brand new this year for the high school programs are these inquiry projects that we've built. You'll also see them in the newest versions of our middle school programs. But regardless, everyone's going to have something there for a unit opener or unit closer. Over here to the right, I have quick access to different libraries that TCI provides me. For example, I've got something called video libraries that if I click on, anywhere there's video used in the program, I can filter to find those videos. So if I'm looking for a very teachable moment, it's easy to be able to grab that. And then there's libraries for games, which we'll be activating very soon. That's not active for anyone right now, but it will be. Biographies, and then a civics library, which is an excellent place to go, not just if you're a government teacher, but even if you're a middle school US or world teacher, or you teach world cultures, or you teach high school world or US history. Everybody's a civics teacher at some level. And so this will provide you some really chunkable ideas that you can utilize regardless of what your subject matter would be within the civics realm. So there's a library for that. Now at the bottom down here, this is where I'm going to see all of the chapters. Again, what we call at TCI a lesson for that unit. So in this unit, there are 8 lessons, 8 chapters, starting with understanding post-war tensions from World War I, finishing with the New Deal and its legacy. So these are all of the chapters and lessons that make up this unit on the Great Depression. What I want to do is I want to go in and I want to navigate a little bit further, and I want to go into just one of these, and we're going to take a look at the human impact of the Great Depression. So I'm going to click that green button to explore it a little bit further. And notice what's happened now is now I've navigated to resources that are specific to the lesson. Now, for everyone, I don't care if you're a first-year teacher or a veteran teacher and you've been in the class 31 plus years. One of the things that all of us can always do to improve upon ourselves is prepare. And one of the things that we want to be able to provide you are lots of suggestions on how to prepare for a variety of different needs inside your class. To wit, up here at the very top in this orange area, you'll see an overview. If it's your first time teaching this lesson, we'll provide for you kind of a roadmap of the things that your students will experience if you do it with fidelity, and roughly about how much instructional time is associated with that part of the lesson. You'll see materials. This is where you can get your handouts, placards, all those PDFs that I talked about that, hey, if your district didn't buy placards, if your district didn't buy you the lesson guide, this is where you're going to find them right here. Look, I've got a link for placards that I can click on, and boom, my placards are going to be right there. And I can share those with my students. I can print them out for myself if I need to. There's the notebook. If I want to do my notebook with students in print format, but my district didn't purchase notebooks, no biggie. I've got it right here in PDF. So we're going to make sure that you're taken care of one way or the other. You may see suggestions on teacher prep, and certainly you're going to want to explore the suggestions that we provide in differentiating instruction. All of us are going to have EL students who are reading and writing below grade level, students that have special education needs, and advanced learners. It doesn't matter if you're in a general ed class, you're still going to have students with a variety of needs. Our goal at TCI is that everyone would experience the same lesson, but have accommodations based on what their needs are. So we want to give you some specific suggestions on how you can modify that instruction and make it easier for you and for the students to be successful. We'll also provide you some suggestions on how you can enhance that lesson. In this case, using film, great websites that fit perfect with whatever that topic is. So this area, this planning box, it's not viewable to students. This is just for you. And it's something that we do for every lesson that's in there. Some 489, I believe, social studies lessons, grades K through 12. We do that for every one of those lessons. As you scroll beneath that, you're going to see that everyone will have some lesson options that they can use with their students. They can dive deeper, and you can also assess with your students. So let's start by looking at some of the assessment options. Let's say you want your students to just focus in on the reading. All right, you click on the link and it will open up the reading. This is the same content that would be in your book. Now, if you don't see that, if you're not in the new navigation, where is that? It's over in the sidebar right there. You can see it listed right there. So if you don't see the new navigation, or you're not able to opt into that yet, no worries, you still have it. Just open up your sidebar and click on reading, and this is where you'll see the text. You can navigate to other chapters. You can navigate to sections within the chapter, and it will even point out for you what page you would find that in the comparable national textbook if you were to have that. While it's the same content that would be in your physical textbook, there are some differences. The differences are in the features. So you can have text audio, for example.
The human impact of the Great Depression.
You have what's called a main idea viewer. And what that does is it bolds, and I'll zoom in so that you can see this here. It bolds the key sentences within a passage of text. You have a markup tool, which allows you to go in and actually, or allows the student, I should say, to mark up their textbook. So they can mark it up and say, all right, I'm going to put a green highlighter on that, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put a yellow highlighter or orange or whatever color that is there. And then I'm going to do the rest of that in blue for whatever reason. Any of their markups, it will save them, and they will always be able to view them. And this is something that anyone would need to open up your sidebar to see. It will save any of their markups in a reference area called My Notes. So this is some of the features of the online text. They can, of course, as well, download a PDF version of the textbook. They can, when I say they, I'm meaning the student, or you can download an offline version of the text and make that available to your students if you need. Any of the images, the graphs, the maps, the charts, they're clickable. You can point and click on them, and you can even analyze them in greater detail by using a magnifying glass, or if you're on a mobile device, use pinch and zoom. As you scroll down, if there are notebook prompts related to the lesson section that you're in, then we'll put those notebook prompts down there for you and for the student. For you, you'll see what the prompt is for the students, and you can even model for them what a response would look like, or share what answers would look like, especially if there's some specificity to the things that you're looking for. They, of course, do not have the ability to view the answer key. And I'll show you exactly what it looks like from a student perspective in a little bit.
Hey, Brian, let me jump in if I can for a second. There have been a couple questions from folks who their dashboard, their text selection tool, et cetera, look a little different. And I think it's mostly because they're in a district where they're using some kind of the hybrid of TCI's programs, which is what I've shared with them. But do you know what the timing looks like on when those hybrid programs will join the new dashboard?
The time will probably be sometime this fall. Frankly, what we want to make sure that we do is communicate, with the administration. And like, I know CPS really well because Kathy, I live in Cincinnati, by the way, and have worked with Dave and the others there in CPS. So, we're working on a timeline to make sure that it rolls out and that doesn't upset the apple cart for people who are already underway. So it's a little bit different for districts who are already in the middle of a custom program than it is for someone who's just adopting TCI for the first time, or they're coming back and they're using a national program that's not been customized to a district or a state level.
And then I'll go ahead and ask on April's behalf. She's in Lawrence County, South Carolina. Do you know if they're one of these hybrid kind of districts? Offhand, probably not.
I don't know that off the top of my hand, but April and anyone, if you ask a question like you just did right there, and I don't know the answer to it, and I don't know the answer to that question, the best thing to do, and I'll put it into the chat right now, is email. I think I beat you. Oh, you already beat me to it. Yeah, just email info@teachtci.com. You can always reach out to us that way. And that's the best thing to do, because we will make sure that it gets routed to the right person to give you the right answer that you need. You're welcome. Absolutely. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my lesson overview page. And I just want you to think about the navigation that we just went through. It's pretty simple, right? We've got a sidebar, things that we pick appear here. There are things that we can access at the unit level, things that we can access at the lesson level, things that will help us prepare. And as you'll see in the next part of what I'm going to go over, things that will help you to teach. So I haven't gone into the classroom activity where the word alive comes from for all of our programs. I haven't gone into that yet. Just really focused on navigation more than anything else. So with that being said, I'm going to give you your next attempt at answering a poll question. So are you ready to move on from basic navigation? Red would be, I have questions. Yellow is proceed with caution, or green would be put the pedal to the metal. You can scan that QR code. Again, if you join late, you could go to menti.com and put in this code 67952553. Or Carl, let's pop in, and I'll do that, or if you can beat me to it, pop in the direct link to the poll question there. So far, we're at 100%. We do have some that are saying proceed with caution. I've got some young drivers in the house. I understand that. And Megan, you actually have a question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute you. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now, and you can ask your question, Megan. Just make sure you hit the little mute bar to unmute yourself. There you go. Megan? Oh, Megan, I don't hear you. Wait just another couple seconds here.
It may be some kind of a glitch on the Zoom. So Megan, if you'll type it in quickly into the chat, I'll make sure that we get to it. As Brian is able to jump in, we'll get on that.
All right. So Megan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable your talking just so you don't have to worry about it. So just pop that into the chat in there, and then Carl will let me know what that question is. All right. So for the next part, what I want to do is I want to get into, there we go. Don't worry about that question yet. Don't try to answer that yet. I want to get into lesson planning. So what's the Alive all about? History Alive, Social Studies Alive, Government Alive, Econ Alive, Geography Alive. It's all alive. So where does that come from? Well, it comes from the lesson activities that we create for every program. And when you open up our lesson activities, you'll have a slide deck that you can use when you're lesson planning. And then you can also use when you're facilitating the lesson, and you can share them with your students as well. And these slide decks are really great. So let me show you just a piece of a lesson that is on the Great Depression, the human impact of it, to show you why they are the alive part of TCI. So this lesson, and all lessons, start with an essential question. How did ordinary Americans endure the hardships of the Great Depression? We begin every lesson with a preview. Now, in our preview in this lesson, we're going to have the students listen to a song, Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? So let me play the song. And while the students listen to it, we also give them the lyrics right in their notebook.
They used to tell me I was building a dream, and so I followed the mark. When there was earth to plow, guns to bear, I was always there, right on the job. They used to tell me I was building a dream, with peace and glory ahead. Why should I be standing in line, just waiting for bread?
Now I'm going to scroll down. I want you to see there's a picture with this notebook prompt, and then there's a place for the students to answer the question right there. And they can also click to hear the question be read aloud. So if there's audio or video, we're going to put it right in the slide deck there for you. We'll also provide you the prompts that you can use to get to the next piece. So we make a transition after them listening to that to where we tell them, hey, in this lesson, we're going to be learning about how the Great Depression impacted ordinary Americans. And our essential question is, how did ordinary Americans endure the hardships? So we want you to be able to answer that question after several days with lots of different kinds of pieces of information. So we're going to give them the ability to go in and read the text. Now, we saw the features of the text before. Here you can actually see we put a little link that will open up the text directly. So if you share these slide decks with the students and they click on those green buttons, whether it says notebook, where it says read, or whatever it might be, they can interact with them and they can actually get to their reading and their notebook all right from the slide decks. So it's a good reason to be able to share them with them as you're facilitating the lesson. Now, in this particular, the big piece of content that is the focal point of this lesson, we also are teaching content, but also marrying it together with a strategy. We're going to involve some writing in this lesson. Now, how that will happen is we're going to pair the students up together, and they're going to be taking a tour of the United States in the 1930s. They're going to meet, quote unquote, meet some ordinary Americans, and they're going to be creating some note scrapbooks that they're going to use to write a letter later on as they're writing letters to Eleanor Roosevelt. So we'll give them directions. Your prompts are here that you can post and you can project for your students. And again, you've got links over here that your students can access directly. They can quickly hop into the audio where they can hear the music play in the background. So if you're looking for a little ambience to go along with it, you've got it. But what will happen is the teacher's going to set up placards around the room, those laminated picture cards. They're going to set those up around the room in stations. So for example, at station 1, they see this placard right here. At station 3, they see this one. And they're directed in each one of them to read a particular part of their text. And then, of course, with each station, they'll also be given a handout with some primary source information that they're asked to analyze and go through and read. So it's a really good opportunity for them to use informational text to analyze primary sources, and then they're going to do something at the same time. They're writing their little scrapbook pieces, because at the end, they're going to bring it all together by writing a letter to Eleanor Roosevelt. So we give the directions on what needs to be included. Now, while your TCI program isn't going to have this exact lesson, it's going to have lessons like it and others that are very different. Some lessons are very much body kinesthetic. Some lessons are what we call skill builders, where students are paired up. Some lessons are built around discussions. Some lessons are built around the powerful use of visuals. Every lesson will have an instructional pedagogical strategy, and every lesson will teach content, and it's what brings the learning alive. So the best thing that you can do if you're a brand new teacher to TCI is that when you get into your lessons is to think about how you're going to be able to use these TCI classroom activities. You're going to love them. They're out of sight. Carl, you have a favorite that you like to do with your students? I'm sorry, I picked on you all of a sudden right there. Carl, you're on mute.
There I am. I was muted. Sorry about that. God, I love Zoom.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorites is in the U.S. history program is the dot game. It's
Yes.
this great activity. It's called an experiential exercise, one of the 6 strategies that TCI, all of its lesson activities fall under the umbrella of one of these 6 strategies. And the dot game is this great game where a small number of students have a pink dot and others don't, and they get into this suspicion, accusation mode, and it's really designed to recreate the McCarthy era, the Red Scare, and it's a fantastic exercise, and my kids always loved it.
That's a great example. Again, that is a very different kind of lesson than the one that we were looking at, which was all about a writing exercise. This one's very much about that body kinesthetic experience. So again, you're going to see different kinds of instructional lessons. What I loved about using History Alive with my students is that they came to class knowing that whatever we did, it was going to be interesting. It was going to be engaging, and they were never quite sure. There was always this little tension that hung in the air as we started that first day of a new lesson, because they weren't quite sure what they were going to experience. They just knew it was going to be good. So that's some examples of what you do with a lesson and how you utilize it as a teacher. You use it to plan. You can go through that slide deck. You can also share it. And I'm going to show you right now how you share slide decks with students. And then we're going to start to take a look at things on the back end. What does it look like from an actual student's perspective? So if you look right down here in the lesson that Carl had mentioned, it's fighting the Cold War at home. With my little slide deck right there, as well as a lesson outline, both of them have, and I'll zoom in so that you can see a little bit better, both of them have this little button enabled called Share with Students. So if I click that, that slide deck will then be shared with my students. So I can click OK there, and you can always, as a teacher, view what am I sharing with my students in the entire program in terms of the lessons, by going up to the very top and then clicking View Your Shared Slides. And this will show you all of the lessons that you're currently sharing with your students. So it's really easy to be able to share these slide decks with the students so that they have them inside their account. And if you need to unshare it, it's really simple. You just click on that purple button again, and boom, it's unshared. Let me show you what it looks like, though, from a student's perspective, and at the same time, show you a very important tool. Now, I used to teach a kid named Matt Merkel. He's probably a teacher today because they always seem to, I was that kid. I did not think that Matt was going to get through the 8th grade without either him driving me crazy or him being removed from my classroom. We've all had a kid like Matt Merkel, right? Probably many kids like Matt Merkel. Well, the thing about students like Matt is I want to see things through his eyes. I want to see his work. Well, you can do that at any point in several different places. I'm going to use the sidebar to show this because it doesn't matter whether you've opted in or not to the new navigation. Everybody can do this. In your sidebar, if you click Dashboard, one of the things that you'll see is a dashboard where you can quickly plan a lesson, quickly read the text, quickly view assignments that you've made. More on that in a little bit. I want you to see right above that to where it says sign in as student. Now, if I click right there, my entire class roster, I've only put one student in here, but my entire roster of students would appear, and I can sign in as any one of them. So I'm going to sign in as Owen, who is my number 2. We have boy-girl twins. So he was baby B. He was my number 2. So I'm now logged in as Owen. I'm signed in as him. Everything that I view as him is through his eyes. And if I make changes, it will override existing student work because the computer thinks I'm Owen. Now I can see he's got a sidebar too that he can minimize or open up just like I can. But note, he doesn't have as much over here on his sidebar that I do as a teacher for good reason. We don't want him making assessments. He can view assignments. So if I assign something to him, he can access it or at least see it's upcoming, like right here, where I've scheduled a test in advance. But actually, if he clicks on it, he's going to find out he can't access that yet, not until the 9th at 1 p.m. and it will be open for 1 hour because that's how long his class belt is. But down here, this is where I've assigned a chapter. And again, I assigned it today, but it's due by next week when they would take their test. He's actually begun some work. Note right here that he's turned in the introduction and he's in progress on section 1. These don't have anything by them, meaning to me, he's not done anything with. So I can go in and I can view, for example, where is he in the introduction? He said he turned it in. If I scroll down there, boom, there it is. There's his answer, which of course he put in Latin because only Owen would do that. And he hit turned in there. Now we saw in section 1 that he was in progress, meaning he's not turned it in, but he's done some work in it. So I can see an answer right there that was saved today. Oh, and right there, he's only answered that first question. So what does it look like when a student is working and they answer a question in their notebook? Well, it looks like this. They answer it and it will give them right away a notification that that work is saved. So roughly about every second or second and a half, their work is going to be saved. And it's not just prompts, it is annotation. So like if they annotate an image, it will save automatically for them. They've got tools that they can use to annotate things. When they're ready to turn something in, they just click that button at the very bottom right there, and it will notify the teacher. And I'll actually show you that from my perspective, a teacher's perspective, of what happens when students turn something in. But they'll be able to notify their teacher by clicking turn in. So this is what the text in the notebook looked like from a student perspective. Well, one of those things that teachers can assess students with is called a lesson game. It's at the end of every chapter. I'm going to show you this one for that chapter on the Great Depression. It's called Crack the Code. They're not all the same game, by the way. But when they play this game, they're given questions that go directly to their content. And they have 2 attempts to be able to answer it correctly. If they miss it on a first attempt, they can guess it again on a second attempt. If they get it right, they'll get half credit. Or in this case, where I've missed it both attempts, I'm told what the correct response is. That data is instantaneous to the student, but it's also instantaneous to the teacher. They can go in there and they can view up to the second exactly what students have answered in their lesson games. And I'll show you that from a teacher's perspective, again, here in a minute. So again, it's really simple for students to be able to get into their accounts and be able to maneuver around using the sidebar and using what you've assigned to them that's there. Now, I know that there are probably some people in our webinar today that may use things like Google Classroom or Canvas or Schoology. And I'd like you to know that we do support integrations with all 3 of those. And if you go, and I'll show you right now, you can go up to, and I'll log back in as a teacher, very important here. If you go to your help area, you will see that there is a whole section devoted to the learning management systems of Google Classroom, Schoology, and Canvas. And why you might want to do that, or at least have a conversation with your administrators in your district, is that you can actually create assignments in TCI that will talk to your learning management system and share that assignment there where your students can access it. They'll do their work in TCI. but then when you grade it in TCI, the grades will sync right to your LMS for you. I'm not going to go over that in this webinar. We do have recorded webinars and even a self-paced course that goes over that, and we've got some help articles, but I did want to make sure that I share it because I can be sure that some of you use one of those learning management systems that are there. What I want to do now is I actually want to get ready to go into managing assignments, assessments, and grades. But before I do that, we took a look at a lesson. We saw some of the features that students can use in a lesson, and we gave some examples of different lesson activities. So how engaged will your students be in lessons like this? You can actually answer that question right now live. You can scan this QR code, or again, go to menti.com, put in that same code, 67952553, or if you want, I'll even pop in that link directly down here so that everyone can participate in that poll. There are, 5 people that have answered so far, and we're, as a developer at TCI, we always hope that that number is somewhere between the 4 and the 5. That's our kind of our happy zone of what you see, right? So get a chance, go into your program, go through some of those lesson activities, really look at those classroom activities, start to see what your students are going to experience. All right, the last portion that we have, and this is going to be quick, we're going to go over assigning, assessing, and grades. And while I'm going to go over this quickly, don't worry, because I'm going to give you links that you can use to be able to get more information on how to do this. That's much more in depth if you want it to be. It can go as deep as you'd like. But I am going to do this like we've done it before. We're going to do it live so that you can see. I actually went in and I made some student data. I've made some assignments, but I'm going to show you quick how easy and quick it is to assign something, and then I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to grade it. So let's go live into my account and zoom back out here and make sure that I'm logged in as a teacher. We're going to go into the Pursuing American Ideals program. Let's say that I wanted to assign the chapter that Carl was talking about, which would be from this unit on World War II and the Cold War. It was lesson 40, Fighting the Cold War at Home. Let's say I just want to assign the reading. Do you notice right down here on this tile, there is a little calendar icon that's right there. If I click on that, it will actually auto-populate for me the lesson and the text with some things already pre-checked. Now I can override it. I can go in here and say, nah, I really just want them to focus on the introduction here. And then over here, I can determine who, I can determine when, and I can even give my assignment an optional name. When I've done that, like if I go in and I give my due date here, I can assign it. It's at that moment that it shows up on my students' TCI dashboard. They would then be able to go in there and be able to see that assignment that you've made to them. There it is right there, and be able to click it and to access it. Now, it's not that they wouldn't have access to the text prior to that, but using their dashboard, if they're using that, that alerts them to know that, hey, there's a start, there's an end date, and I need to get it in by a certain time. That little calendar icon, that's not the only place that shows up, by the way. That little calendar icon, if you go into, for example, the lesson game, and you can do this as a teacher. Whoops, need to make sure I'm doing this as a teacher. If you click into a lesson game, all right, I've done something wrong here. I broke it, Carl. Let's go into, where is it? Human impact, the Great Depression. Let me try it this way right here, crack the code. All right, I don't know what I did wrong, but you can see this little calendar icon. I can create an assignment. Boom, I'm going to click it right there. And again, it's going to pre-populate that information for me. So really simple to create an assignment. If you need to do it from scratch manually, you've got a little button over there in the sidebar. You just will need to click the green button and then pick and choose what you want to assign, who you want to assign it to, when you want it to be due, and then decide whether you want to give it an optional name. When students turn in work, it comes into your gradebook. You're able to view that lots of different ways. You can, for example, the notebook, you can grade it by lesson or grade it by section. Now, I like to grade by section because I may not assign every section from the text. So here I'm going to grade by section. I can see exactly what Owen's turned in versus what's in progress. If I drill into, for example, the one that's in progress, I'll be able to see his work and know what he's done so far. That's that little gobbledygook that you saw me just type there. And I can even give him critical feedback. I can stamp if I'm looking for some quick feedback, or if I've got some very specific feedback in there, I can type it back to him. And that comment would then be shared with Owen in his account. It's that simple. And then I can give him a score just on that section if I want.
Brian, question from Erlen on Google. Is there, and I haven't used Google Classroom with TCI in some time, so I'll let you take a look at that. But is there some kind of an extra button that automatically connects things?
Erlen, what I would say is if you use our little help article, it'll walk you through step by step on what you need to do. You'll need to establish a link between your account and your Google account, your TCI account and your Google account. You'll also match up your classes. And then once you've done those two things, when you create an assignment, it will automatically do that for you. It won't be an additional button or anything like that. But again, just go through the help section. You'll see articles that'll walk you through step by step. And we even have, I believe, a course and a recorded webinar that will show it and demonstrate it for you too.
And then, Brian, we're down about 3 minutes, just so you know.
Yep. So really simple to be able to grade. You do have options on grading by student or grading by question, where you'd see everybody's response to the same question. You can alter the point values to any of that. Things that are auto scored would be like the lesson game, where you can go in and you can view individual performance, or you can even at the very top of that column do an item analysis and see what percentage of your students answered those questions correctly. I don't see an assessment score here because Owen hasn't taken it yet, but it's a little bit of a mix between the notebook and the lesson game, because there are some questions that are closed-ended. Those are auto-scored. There are some questions that are open-ended. Those I need to view and I need to give a point value to before we'd see a number there. So it's simple to be able to track your grades and be able to keep access to all of that there. The only thing that I didn't show you here, but I'll quickly show, is over in your sidebar, when you click on assessments, you've got lots of options when it comes to summative assessment. You'll have 2 pre-made tests. You'll have access to a question bank. You can go in and create your very own test. And in fact, folks, you can create as many different tests as you want. You can give them in print or you can give them online. You can assign them, if you're doing it online, to whoever you want, whether it's one student, a group of students, whole classes, every student. Really simple to be able to make those assessments, and they keep year over year. So if you've got a multi-year account with TCI, you'll be able to access those year over year. All right, as we're closing out here, I'm going to skip that last poll question here. You might have questions that go beyond the time that we've had to be able to spend together. So again, there are 2 places I'm going to encourage you to go. One is help.teachtci.com. The other is you can always email our support team at info@teachtci.com. You can call us at 800-497-6138, or if you're a Twitter aficionado, you can even send us a direct message at TeachTCI. If you want to take a picture of that, I'll leave it up for a few seconds. And what we're going to share with you here at the end are just some additional support resources. Now, if you didn't get a chance to be able to take a picture of that, no worries. Don't forget, we're going to record, or we have been recording this, and we will post this. So we do have a navigation guide. That navigation guide is, I'm going to provide that link for you again, real quick, right there into the chat. That's a good desk reference to have. There's other ways that you can get additional support. We have live and on-demand professional development opportunities. You can take on-demand courses, attend live webinars like you are right now, or even go to our webinar library. Perhaps somebody who's watching this is watching that on demand. So you can get to it all right on our professional development page. So I'm going to copy that I'm going to put that into the chat, a direct link to it. And the self-paced courses are in the very same link, by the way. There's one last thing, and that is we do have a really active TCI teacher group on Facebook that you can join. There is the direct link to it. So if you're a person that likes to use social media and Facebook, you can actually join our Facebook teacher group. Wow, 1 hour flies by. Are there last questions before I see the question, John, that you have about getting a certificate? Yes, we will make sure that we email you a certificate for the professional development time for today. So you'll get an email with that after the webinar is done. I think we'll send you a webinar or an email probably with a link for the evaluation. And then once you fill that out, I believe you get the certificate. Other questions? Okay. Well, Carl, thank you so much. Carl, you the man. I appreciate you. Yep. And folks, we want you to have a great school year. If you do have questions, reach out, let us know. You've got a much broader TCI community than just one or two faces like Carl and I. There's a whole host of people that have got your back, and we want the best for you. So have a great school year. We look forward to hearing the great things that are happening in your classroom. Have a great year. Bye, everybody.
Take care, y'all. Thank you.